Every empire believes that power comes from the throne, but the real kings never appeared at coronations. They prefer the silence of windowless rooms where numbers decide the fate of nations. The story of the powerful has always been told by those who appeared: kings, presidents, generals. But the real story was written by someone who never needed to be seen. For centuries, money was just a stage. The spectacle was control, and the audience, distracted, believed they were watching the play without realizing who was writing the script. While empires rose with banners and armies, there was another empire invisible, made of debt securities, private coffers, and families who understood something kings didn't. Royal power isn't conquered, ... It's inherited and hidden. In the 18th century, London and Amsterdam already beat as the financial hearts of the world. The aristocracy mingled with bankers and bankers with governments. Thrones began to borrow, and at that moment, power began to change hands. Gold ceased to be a symbol of royalty. It became the password of the invisible. Dynastic fortunes grew like underground roots. Entire families have disappeared from public view, but not from the financial map. They created trusts, holding companies, tax havens, and with them, a new type of fiefdom, the empire of influence. No coats of arms, just signatures. As the 19th century marched toward the industrial revolutions, something more profound was happening. Money stopped being metal and became a promise. Promises that only a few knew how to write. The rest of the world just believed them. This is how the great financial dynasties were born. The Rothschilds, the Warburgs, the Morgans. Names that became legends, but whose true power never appeared in school books. They didn't need to rule countries. They ruled those who ruled countries. Human error began when states forgot that they were indebted to these private empires. Every war fought, every reconstruction signed, increased the power of those who financed the conflict. The blood was public, the profit private. And when the 20th century dawned shrouded in 2 world wars, the invisibles lost nothing. On the contrary, they financed both sides, secured the post-war period, and redesigned the global credit system. The dollar was born from this redesign, supported by agreements that brought together governments and central banks, but whose roots remained private. And so slowly the planet entered the age of hidden fortunes. Companies have become parallel states. Investment funds, new crowns. The families that once ran banks now run media, technology, and energy conglomerates. And while the public celebrated freedom of the market became the new sovereign. But what is sovereignty when debt decides destiny? In the shadow of the numbers, corporations have learned the oldest trick in history. Make it appear that power is diffuse, when in fact it is too concentrated to be seen. Today, hidden wealth is no longer in vaults, but in algorithms. It is not counted in coins, but in data. The concentration that was once physical is now digital and infinitely harder to track. The new dynasties don't have surnames, they have logos. And as in the past, the mistake repeats itself. Indebted governments depend on who controls the flow of credit. Entire cities live under the control of anonymous funds that buy their debts, their properties, their future. Inequality is not an accident. It's by design, but every structure, no matter how invisible it seems, has cracks. When money loses its moral backing, the system begins to collapse from within. The public wakes up, bubbles burst, confidence evaporates. And what remains is the silence of those who always knew too much. Meanwhile, the cycle continues. Old families hide behind new investment vehicles. Old empires are reincarnated as shell corporations. And the common citizen stuck on the surface still believes that wealth is what can be seen. But real power is what never shows up on the balance sheets. It's in the treaties, in the algorithms, in the foundations that define the future under the guise of philanthropy. They call it social investment, but it's modern-day control. And whenever this happens, the cycle starts again. Power, once again, changes its face, and the world, once again, applauds the show. without understanding who wrote the script. History doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes in coins, in data, in promises. And every time we forget who is really in charge, the illusion of progress is renewed. Maybe the secret isn't finding out who they are, but understand why we always need them. Because in the end, what rules the world is not money. It's trust, and it's the one wealth that should never be in the shadows. If this opened your eyes, sign up. History still has secrets to reveal.